everyone. My name is Ongezwa Mbele. Welcome to the Right to Speak Multimedia project, which is this online session that we'll be doing. Welcome to Poetry Africa. The title of this online session is called Right to Speak Multimedia Project. I'll be engaging two poets, Zizipho and Philile Nkabinde. And the project was an initiative that highlighted spoken word as a way to engage youth voices in Africa and in Europe around issues of human rights and social justice. It's organized by the Goethe Institute South Africa, partnering with Hear My Voice, the Center for Creative Arts, the Stand Foundation, General Representation of Flanders, and Walloni Bruxelles International, and Institute of Franca Africa d'Ouest, I think that's France, Institute of France, Africa d'Ouest, so I did my French very well there. Welcome Zizipho and Philile. I'll just read your bios right now. Zizipho Bam is an award-winning interdisciplinary poet, copywriter, visual storyteller based in Cape Town, South Africa, using the body and its experience as an inspiration. Her poems reimagine longing, belonging, loss, and love, and turn her stories into works of art. Bam also holds the 2020 New Coin Prize for her poem, Learning to Swim, and the 2021 New Contrast National Poetry Prize for her poem, Silence in Church. She is the author of the poetry collection titled Sunflowers for My Lovers, and this was published in 2022. And Philile Nkabinde is a published poet, music journalist, copywriter, movement improviser. At her artistic core, she is a story offerer who uses her intuitive curiosity to write, perform, and offer stories that seek to affirm the indigenous human experience and reveal the nuances of being, breathing, and believing in relation to remembering our innermost selves. She has performed at the JIS, Johannesburg Institute of Advanced and African Studies, Constitutional Hill in partnership with the Among the Lilies, Ode to the Woman, and Real to Reality Film Festival in partnership with Forge, to name a few. She also presents calling circles and poetic meditations for her audiences, inviting them to surrender to the sonic journey being offered. Philile has had 4 of her poems published in the anthology Woman with Brown Thread, edited by Umphile Chisala and supported by the Center for the Less Good Idea. She was selected to be a mentor for the 2023 Spring Writing Fellowship in partnership with Bototo, a collaboration between Nigeria, Ghana, South African writers. As a music journalist, currently working at Music in Africa, she's interested in the Pan-African music sector as it relates to the upliftment of women in music. So, my first question for you, Philile, is, what is the title of your multimedia project? Does it have a specific title, or what issue did it explore?
Hello, Ongezwa, Sanbonani, hey Zizipho. It's really lovely to be here. Thank you so much for having us on this beautiful, beautiful platform. Yes, the multimedia. Sorry, I think I'm just also processing like hearing my bio out loud every time. I just never get used to being confronted with self in that way. It's always so jarring for me. But thank you for the introduction. And yes, the multimedia project does have a name. It's titled Bones, Breath, and Blessings Must Meet. And I steered away from calling it a short film. Instead, I understand it to be a visual meditation. I think also I just don't consider myself a filmmaker per se, and I think that's its own specific, beautiful art form. And so the piece itself really fuses poetry, music, as well as movement, in a way that just asks the viewer to go in, to just tap into whatever world exists within themselves, and to meditate upon whatever spirit brings up. Yeah, that would be it in a
So you
brief
said
manner.
bones, these things must meet. Is
Bones,
that
breath. Yes,
breath?
3 Bs. Yeah, it's a long. I
Three
love long
Bs.
titles. I have a thing for long titles. So
Okay,
bones, breath, and blessings must meet.
and
Yes.
bliss. So
Yeah.
what inspired the title?
Mm. The short form of it would just be life itself, and I guess me moving through moments and experiences in my life where I have felt as though I could never really breathe presently. And as we all know that breath is the vehicle for life. Like we can't, if breath was to leave the rooms in which we all are in, we would all be dead, but we're not, because breath is the thing that keeps us alive, that keeps us vital. And so after just experiencing moments and reflecting in my own times where I was always just breathing on a very shallow level, and not really sinking into the breath. I realized just the power of it, and how it would change the tone of my voice. I was able to strengthen my voice, both spoken and singing, just by changing how I am breathing. And so breath became the centerpiece of the poem. And then I kind of contextualized the past and the future. So breath being a symbol of the present, and then bones and blessings are what then represents the past and the future. So bones being the ancestral aspect of just who we are and what we are and why we are. And then blessings just being the future of experiences and successes and riches and wealth that we are yet to go into. So the poem is the whole piece is about all of those entities meeting in one place.
Thank you. You just told me to take a deep breath.
You
In,
can all
right?
take one. You can all take
We
one.
can all just take one, right?
Yes, at any time. It's always available.
So Zizipho, can you tell us about the title of your project, and also what inspired the title?
Walloni, hi. Thank you for having us here. Shoo, I've been so excited to talk about this. So the name of our project is called Broken Telephone, Grief on the Line. And if anyone remembers as kids, there used to be that game that we will all play, usually in our grandmother's house when all the cousins are gathered, and the one will whisper a message into the next person's ear, and then the message gets passed on and on and on through this line of communication. And by the time that message gets to the end of the line, it's been completely distorted. It's no longer what was said in the beginning. And so I think that's what became the springboard for what we eventually called the project. But I think, just to give some context, is the part of grief being on the line in the broken telephone is exploring this idea that when somebody has passed away in a family and there are children around, and how do we communicate what has happened to the kids? How do we say so and so is no longer here and you won't see them again, and so for us, I think as Black people, there's this myth, where you have to whisper it into the child's ear while they are asleep. You must whisper the news that so and so has passed on, and you will no longer see that person again. And somehow in the morning, within their subconscious, the child has processed that and they completely understand what's happening. But even though they don't understand what the concept of death is, they understand that that person is gone, and so for us, coming from that springboard and saying, then how does that child now process that grief? How do they process seeing people mourning? How do they process that loss? That's where we found the inspiration to say we actually need to give children better tools to kind of express and explain their grief, and creative tools, because as kids, again, like, they don't quite have that language to completely express that this is exactly how I feel. And so that's where poetry came in for us. But at the same time, because we were dealing with such a heavy topic of loss and grief, and in children, it became a very sensitive issue. And so the way that we threaded lightly in that was, one of my collaborators was a social worker, like a childcare professional. And so she came from the point of understanding play therapy, and how do you kind of play with children who are not really mature enough to completely express and speak their feelings, but how do you actually use tools that are, games that are playful for them, in order to help them process and articulate their grief. And so I think it helped us a lot having the childcare professional in that space, even within our process, even within the space that we had it, because then it made it safe for the children to be able to speak, to be able to process. And so, yeah, and then we basically did this through a workshop, which I'll talk more about a bit later. But that reflect and be creative and write these poems, we needed to actually go to the crux of the problem, or at least kind of find ways to explore it and give the children actual tools on how to process this grief. So we did a lot of play therapy, we did a lot of writing exercises, as well as some art classes that we hosted as well, just like in terms of the color wheel and understanding color, understanding how poetry can be an aid for this kind of thing as well. So yeah, that's my very long-winded answer.
That's fine. Just thank you so much. What for that answer. I think of lately, I'm interested in how we don't leave our children behind, whether it's in the world they want to see, that they want to dream about.
Yeah.
In a country where in South Africa there's a huge challenge in terms of a crisis of just really not engaging young children into politics, into complex, nuanced engagement. So I think what you describe is quite important. We've just lost Philile. I'm hoping she'll come back. But I also want to just tell our viewers that we're trying to streamline the multimedia projects. We're just having technical challenges, but we're hoping that we'll get to actually streamline them. But in the meantime, we're just going to talk through about the projects and the processes of the project. Zizipho, I just want to know where did the children come from? Who was involved, and how did you guys select? What age? What age were the children? Who were the facilitators? How did you introduce film, right, into this? At what point? I've got so many questions.
Yeah. So first of all, I worked with two other amazing people. The social worker was Tembile Dubazana, whom I spoke about earlier, who is a social worker and a childcare professional, as well as Uswiti Madlingozi, who is a visual artist, multimedia curator as well. And we worked with an organization here in Cape Town called Living Hope. And it is a space that's basically, kind of coming in between what is happening within the society and communities, and being a hub for children to come in and express themselves and play. So they've got like halls and lots of creative spaces within that, but they've also got a very cool program that they are running, which is mainly focused on grief as well, and kind of how to help the children get counseling, how to understand what has happened within their families. And so we found it was like a very divine alignment that happened, because we found them at a place where we were looking for professionals, and we were also looking for children who already were kind of used to this language of having going through therapy and understanding how the body moves, and just being in that space. And so Living Hope, we worked with children from the ages of 7 to 13. And within the workshop that we hosted, we had about, I'd say, just under 15 children that we ran a poetry writing workshop. And the poetry writing workshop was based on, it's called a sense poem. And what a sense poem is, you basically write a poem according to your 5 senses. So it kind of worked well with the art class, because the art class began with the color wheel and explaining what this color wheel is and the different colors and how they evoke different emotions. And then we gave the kids paint, and they started to paint just freely. But then from that, we developed this idea, and we said, okay, so now you've painted, these feelings that you're having, and a lot of them were very, you'll see when you watch the video as well, is that they're quite graphic, coming from children. Like some of them were drawing sad faces, some of them was just black, the whole page was just black, they just painted it black. And you can see that there is a language that they're trying to develop in understanding their own emotions and expressing those feelings. But we developed that idea and said, okay, then now you have this color. How can we write a poem that kind of speaks to that color and finds a way for you to express your grief and your loss? Some of the kids were quite angry. They said, I don't feel sad. I'm very angry. I'm angry at the person who drove over my loved one. I'm angry at the system. I'm angry at the people who didn't tell me what was going on. I was just confused. So the kids were kind of experiencing a lot of different feelings. And so through this color, we went into the sense poem. And so for example, our project goes into the color red, and we go through, how does the color red smell, and how does it taste, how does it feel when you touch it, how does it sound, and what does it look like? Not just like it looks like the color red, but it might remind you of the car that was driving past. It might remind you of whatever was being cooked in the kitchen and the smell of that when you were told the news. It might remind you of the and again, as abantu abamnyama siyathanda ukombatha, like when something has happened, we want to comfort. Even our physical bodies need to be comforted. And so perhaps there was a lot of ingubo, that kind of sensory experience when you touch it and feel it. And what were you hearing? Because again, you immediately when someone passes, kuyathandazwa. Ngomama from your area coming in, bazongenisa omnye umthandazo, kuyaculwa. And there's hardly any one-on-one very much like authentic time that is spent with the children. It's always just they let them run off. As long as they're fed, they'll be fine. As long as they're dressed, they'll be fine. And so the poem gives attention to that, and it gives attention to what is happening around them, and what are they seeing and feeling and smelling and and hearing at the same time. We were very surprised to see like 7-year-olds writing about You know, they'll say that like the color orange, it sounds like a cell phone ringing, you know, because that's all that they were hearing in that moment when that happened, is like they were just trying to, the phones were ringing nonstop, the phones were ringing, and there was just this no person answering on the other end, you know. And I think that that really kind of helped us give them a tool, or at least just spark an idea of, this is perhaps how you can experience and express loss. Because sometimes for children, it's very easy to say, to use objects in place of humans when you're expressing things like death. When you say, what happens when you lose a shoe, you know, you lose your favorite toy, you know what I mean? And children are very detached from those type of things, so you have to bring it as close to home as possible to say, this is the person that you love most in the entire world, and they are no longer here anymore. How do you you know, how do you write about that? How do you express yourself in that kind of way? And we found a lot that children definitely understand loss. They understand death and that tension that comes with it. During the play therapy session, we were doing just like a literal like physical countdown for the body to like loosen up a little bit. So it's like that 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, you know. And it's literally a way for, you know, the body to completely be stimulated, overly stimulated, and then comes down to, you know, a calm state, about like, you know, breathing, like you were saying, Philile. And in those pauses is when you really get to, you know, tap into your body and really feel, where does it hurt, where does it, you know, where is it stinging, where is it calm, where is it hot, where am I sweating, where am I cold, you know. And just to check in with your body in that kind of way. And I think that's a very useful tool for children as well, because again, they don't have the complete language to articulate these things, but when they can understand how their bodies are reacting to this, then at least there's a way, you know, there's some sort of way to communicate it.
Thank you so much for that, Zizipho. I think at this moment, right, we can see that there's connections from with your work, with Philile's work, right?
Yeah,
And centering the fact that that with Philile's work is that breathing is the most revolutionary act of our time, right? And how we can't leave our bodies behind, right? That we can't leave our children behind in all the things that we experience, right? So that came through, and thank you for sharing that. And so, Philile, I'll just go to you. And my question is, can you describe for us in detail the process of working in the project titled Bones, Breath, and Blessing Must Meet? No, we can't hear you, Philile. When it's fun. So what I'll do is I'll just go while you're figuring out to figure out your microphone. I'll just continue speaking to Zizipho, né? So then the camera is a very tricky thing. So you were working with various mediums, actually, you know. So you play therapy.
Yes.
You've got poetry, right? You've got drama exercise,
yes.
right?
Yeah.
Down, you're centering the body. When and you're working with children, right? So ethical flashes there, right? Of how do you bring the camera in, and how did you have to use the camera working with children, and how do you introduce it to the children, and how did it meet the various mediums, right? Was it at an editing point? Was it in the process?
The camera was a complicated one. I think for months with my team, we were just like, we can't just throw cameras in these children's faces and expect, a beautiful project to come out at the end. You know what I mean? They're children. They're either going to be very goofy about it, or they won't care at all, And so it started firstly with just being just ethical and doing a consent form, because again, they're children who they still have guardians and stuff, so they're underage. And so we did a consent form for all of their parents to sign, to understand that this will be recorded. And then secondly, what we did was we during the play therapy warm-up exercise in the beginning, we kind of let them know that, okay, we're gonna start recording now. But we started that in the middle of the play, so that they were able to kind of get used to this thing very soon into the workshop that we were doing. And so we did the play exercise, and the camera was very much in their face, and some of them were a little bit shy, and some of them were, acting up a little bit. But eventually they kind of calmed down. They were so well behaved, such amazing children. Eventually they kind of just calmed down and got used to the camera being in the space, to the point where they would kind of like, pose a little bit for you, whereas we weren't looking for any poses, because for us it was kind of documenting this experience as authentically as possible. So, because we thought about this idea of just getting a child model, right, and asking them to shoot this entire project. And that would have probably worked out with way less admin than we went through. But at the same time, it would have been inauthentic to us, but also inauthentic to what the project was about. Because with the Right to Speak Poetry Project, the main thing was so that, how do you link poetry to social justice? How do you link it to these issues that are very much happening within our societies? And how can poetry play a role in that? And so for us, we had to tap into that, whether, because when you watch the multimedia project, you won't see that. You won't see the social justice. You won't see all of that background work happening. You see the final product. But it was very important for us to go through that workshop, so that we're able to report on a thing that, was a real experience, was a lived experience. And to also say that we did kind of play a role in it, in kind of becoming catalysts for, a way that they can find to express themselves. Even later in their years, they can say, I once went to a workshop and we learned 1, 2, and 3, and I've never forgotten 1, 2, and 3 things that I've learned there. That was our main hope, because we understood that it's not gonna change within one 2-hour workshop. You know what I mean? And so the camera became just a way for us to kind of archive and document what was happening, but mainly what was happening was more important for us than actually the documenting of it. And so in post-production is where we had a problem, because we're like, okay, how do we now show what happened in the workshop in a visual way for people to really kind of experience all of these beautiful discoveries that the children were having during this workshop. And so for us, it became a kind of like showing the process. It's because it's process work. It's never really done. No one's ever really done healing. Like, it's a process. And so even within the final product, for us, it became showcasing that process itself and saying that this is a work in progress, and this is where it's at right now. You know what I mean? And I think I tried with the poetry to also write a poem that was kind of including a little bit of the children's stories in there as well. And so it's written from a very playful, childlike perspective to also kind of tap into my own inner child. I think as collaborators as well during this project, we found ourselves like the more we were talking about, how do we explore, how do we talk to children, how do you explain a difficult concept to a 7-year-old, and so it became about now talking back to yourself, because now I sit in my room and I'm like, okay, how would I have wanted loss to be explained to me as a child? And through that, a little bit of our own inner childs were kind of given attention and said, okay, you needed this at this time and you didn't get it, but here it is now. And here it is in a way that you can fully curate, and in a way that's that's allowing for the way that your mind works, the way that you see the world. And I think we found a great beauty in that, even as a team, to be like, oh, we're also healing through this, Yeah.
Thank you so much. If I can just ask you, I'm gonna ask you to read the poem later on, so give you time.
Okay.
While I'm zooming in to Philile.
Yeah.
Bones and breath and blessing must meet. How was the process for you?
Indeed.
Who did you work with?
Sorry, can you repeat that, Ongezwa? How was the process and?
So I'm saying, how was the process for you? Who did you work with in the process of making this project?
Who? Okay, so there's variations of answers, because there's basically two parts of it. There was the first attempt when we had a team and there was a plan, and there was a script and a storyboard and all these things. And like, I'm just, as Zizipho was speaking, I'm reflecting on just my own inner child as well, and how I've had to grieve her own dreams and ideas too. And it's so beautiful, Zizipho, that you say that you feel like breath was also a vehicle in your piece, because grief was that for me as well, specifically for my inner child. Because as I said in the beginning of this session, that I don't necessarily consider myself a filmmaker. As much as that is true, I know that my inner child still has dreams to do that, to do film, to make film. And I think that, yeah, it will actualize when it does. But during this process, I was working with the filmmaker initially in the initial plan that we had. And then, life happened and things changed. But it was just so interesting for me to note that as soon as I surrendered to whatever this process wants to be, that's when things started coming together. In the first attempt, when I had like the storyboard and cinematography and all these things, nothing was working. And when I say nothing, I mean it in the true sense of the word, because there was just so much control that I think the team and I were trying to exert, mostly me, because I was the one leading. And so I had Uslindile Mthembu as the theatre kind of practitioner who would help us translate the movement with the poem, Babalo Mukwena as the filmmaker, Kutaji Wanjia as the movement instructor as well. And was a very beautiful, beautiful team that I wholeheartedly resonate with, and I respect their work very much. But I needed to go inside myself and try to understand why I'm trying to put so much control over this. What do I not believe in this message, and why I was trying to make it so prim and proper. So in the first attempt, yeah, we only got behind the scenes footage, really. The truth of the message was not able to come out. And it was only once I kind of stripped everything down and just explained to the team where I was. This was over a couple of months. Where I was and what I was searching for, and just the conversations I was having with my inner child, and just realizing just how filmmaking was a dream of mine that I really never quite paid. I never gave it much attention. And that speaks so strongly to what Zizipho was saying, is that we don't sit down and ask kids like just what's happening. What's happening in your life? How is your heart? We just kind of assume that they will play it off and be okay. As long as they are fed and dressed, as Zizipho said. So yeah, it was very jarring, very confronting. for me to undergo this process. But on the other side came a very beautiful piece that the entire team was proud of. But it did require us to surrender, to put it quite simply. We had to let go of things like budget and all the things that they tell creatives are important, just as far as the technicalities go. And as much as that can be important, it can be an element, there is a time though where I think us as creatives or creators do rely too heavily on the equipment and the editing and the production. We don't just sit and ask ourselves, why are we here actually? Why are we gathered? Who do we want to speak to? What is the point of all our energy cultivating right now? And so once we did that, that's when the work just came. All the mistakes happened to be the best scenes in the film, or the moving visual meditation as opposed to film. So yeah, it was quite, it was a journey. It really was a journey that I don't think words can fully encapsulate. I think it will be evident in the piece itself. But yeah, it really took just a reckoning with self and my inner child to just understand that there are dreams that I myself am not aware of as yet. And I just need to be patient and consistent in reaching them and learning about them, because they also want to learn about me. I think as we chase our dreams, the dreams themselves also want to chase us. And we need to be okay with that and allow that to happen when it does.
Okay. Okay. I've got one question for you, and then we're gonna play Zizipho's multimedia project. Is it possible to play it? Okay.
I think we can play at the end. Yeah.
Okay. We don't have that much time, but let me continue speaking and seeing what's possible. With let me continue speaking to Philile. So Philile, you really talk about this notion of having to shade and prioritize you, and in the process, the process gave you that, right? And let go of things that didn't need the process. I wanna know with you. So there's movement, as in a movement dance, not dance movement in theater, performance terms. I'm just letting everyone know that. And then, so who wrote the poem? Did you write the poems?
I did, yes.
And so were you responding? Was the movement, were you moving in the film, or was the, okay. So, and take us through that process of actually working with movement and poetry. Did you have to, and how did you combine the two? Did you respond to movement and poetry, or was it something that was just a synergy?
Sure. Hey, how much time do you have, Ongezwa?
Not that
Because
much
like
time.
in my mind, I'm trying to
keep it short. Keep it short.
I will try my best, but you're just asking such good questions. So like I'm trying to keep the answers to be true yet short. Sure. So yes, I did write the poem. I performed the poem as well. And I do the movement alongside Mbale, who's the other movement improviser.
Okay.
And basically, when I sat down and attempted to gather all of what we had, it was just a matter of sitting with the fact that we actually had more poems than I thought, which is to say that I wrote one poem. So Bones, Breath, Blessings Must Meet is one poem. And then I added some sounds into it, and then we added movement as the kind of overarching theme to link the music and the poetry together. And when we sat with everything that we had, it turned out to be 3 poems speaking to each other, which in and of itself is a 4th poem. So yeah, it was I guess in the sense of multimedia, it had multi layers. that we had to be responsible for as well. And so that was a very interesting exercise, because to be both the writer and the person who's now translating the word through body, and then also then musically, yeah, it was quite multi-layered, and we didn't have to do much work as far as aligning all those entities, which also is to say that it's all one and the same thing. You know, when we really realize that music, poetry, and movement all are powered by the breath. You know, you can't, in order to sing, you need your breath. In order to move, you need breath. In order to recite the poems, you need to be inhaling breath for it to come out. And so, yeah, they all kind of spoke to each other and found their way through in a very beautiful way, in a very unspoken way as well. Umbali, who dances in the piece, just, there was no brief that I gave them at all. They sat with the musical piece for a few days and then did their own practices and rituals around it. But when we were shooting everything, there was not, I mean, I was directing, but no words were being exchanged. You know, I didn't have to tell anyone what to do or how to do it. The piece itself was able to guide us all, and then it all aligned with all of what we gave to that piece.
Okay. And where did you shoot?
We shot in nature, which is the.
You see, now I've got good questions. Tell us about the nature point. Oh no, she froze.
She's frozen.
Oh no. Okay.
Am I back?
Yes, you back.
Are we live? Are we good? Okay.
Yes, we're
This
good.
is actually another aspect of it. Like, technology, especially in nature specifically, is a very interesting world. Like, the amount of footage that we lost was just, it was very interesting to note that, you know, as soon as you walk into a space as vast and as sacred as nature, regardless of where you.
We lost Philile, but we'll go back to you, Zizipho. Philile is just having issues with technology and connection. And if I can just ask people online, the audience online, to share comments or questions for Zizipho and Philile when she comes back. Do you mind reading that poem for us? Do you have it?
Yes, I do. Let me just open it so I can read it for you. So it is called Broken Telephone, and it starts with a cool down warm up exercise. So we go 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 4, 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. 2, 1. 2, 1. 1, 1. Grief is the color red. Grief looks like a scared face, a presence that comes rolling in and out of sight, a man found unnamed in the street. Grief is a color that begs to be unseen, not Joseph and his coat of many colors. It is of an invisible kind known only to its being, camouflages as it pleases, calls for my deepest fears to flee, take heed and find another home where it is safe, where many shades can sit in one place. Grief is uncertain and appears to be formless and uncased. Grief looks where I cannot see. Grief smells like molding shoes, onions burning in the kitchen with no one to cry to, the residue of gun smoke filling the air, smells like car tires screeching the road of the drive-by. Grief smells like baby clothes locked in a suitcase, like Vaseline and baby powder spoiled on the bathroom counter. Grief smells like an undying fire. Grief tastes like bad milk. not quite sour, but not fresh enough to stomach. Grief tastes ugly, turns my face into itself at every lick, tastes as bland and numbing as ice, melts my mouth and then asks for more, a thirst that milks you dry. Grief gives me dry mouth. My taste buds get lost in the desert. Even the sand refuses to stick to my tongue. Salt ceases to sting. Grief tastes like dried up tears on my face. Grief sounds like an echo where words do not speak, a silence that cuts through the skin. No song is loud enough to be heard. Recurring screams with no mouth to drown in, no drum to burst out of. Grief whispers in my ears and I cannot unhear it. A broken message about my lost love. The noise in my head is crushed into the ringing telephone, ringing nonstop. The telephone keeps ringing, shovels digging into the soil, more prayers sung into the food. Grief sounds nothing like my love's voice. Grief begs to be felt, a pain to be bandaged, a blanket around my mother's face. Who will touch her heart under all that heat? Grief feels like smooth mahogany wood, a closed casket so we do not feel the accident on our skins, like programs on grainy paper and ink to cover our lives. Grief feels like wet paint to hide the stains they left behind. Grief draws a line between me and my peace. Grief draws a line and turns my smile upside down. Grief draws a line and I watch it from the other side of the crowd. Grief rings on the line and I must answer every time.
I'll take a deep breath after that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much and receive.
Thank you.
And I just want to go back to Philile. I heard you breathing. And I just want to talk. So I'm going to read just one of the comments from the audience, right? Wow, what a beautiful picture of grief. One Untube says this, a beautiful poem there, watching from Cameroon.
Wow.
A closed casket, so we do not feel the accidents on our skins. Stelo says this. So even the audience is receiving your poem, and thank you. Philile, I want you to shortly, Zizipho's film is ready to be played, but I want you to continue just shortly describe where in nature. Was it a zoo? Why did you choose this? Why did you choose this this space for your work?
Well, first and foremost, I prayed for the answer to that question. So I wasn't sure at first where to contextualize the work. And it was only after a prayer that I sent up to the God above and the gods below, and I asked where this work needs to live, how it needs to be captured, and the answer was trees, it was grass, it was mountains. And so we went to 2 parks in Johannesburg that we filmed in, and then so it was the Emerentia Dam as well as James and Ethel Park, and those were the spaces that we found to be quite ideal for what we wanted to express and bring out. Yeah, and it really it was such an intrusive process in the most beautiful ways, because as I was saying earlier, just before the connection did what it does, was just that very thing, just the fact that technical glitches and losing footage isn't a coincidental occurrence. It always has, even though we might not know what it means as and when it's happening, there's always a reason why certain things don't want to be captured or certain voices don't want to come out of a microphone, but would rather come out on a performance stage or whatever it is. There's really always like something embedded into little errors. And we worked with that. We let go what didn't want to be captured. Even praying and asking for permission to shoot in nature was very important to us, to just ask for guidance and for us to not misinterpret the assignment was really important. And when all those answers were encouraging and affirming, that's when the work was done. So yeah, it was quite a bit. I remember moments afterwards, we weren't even tired per se, but there was just a lot of weight. We just felt very heavy in the sense of just, yes, the work is done and it is out of our bodies, but there is still a duty that rests within us to just remain true and to understand that as Zizipho was saying, the work is not done. You know, after it's been edited and polished and beautified, the work is still ongoing. It will always be. Healing is very much an ongoing experience and journey. And so, yeah, we were really shown that nature will firstly reveal yourself back at you. It's not, you know, it will, the wilderness that is nature reveals and shows the wilderness that is the self. And so I think we were all ready to look at ourselves and to be intimate with ourselves and to understand that these trees and these clouds are just reflections of ourselves. And as soon as we are, I guess, somewhat ready, but also just compassionate enough with ourselves to sit with that truth and to, you know, understand that there's so much beauty in nature and that same beauty exists within ourselves. There's also so much destruction in nature, which also exists within ourselves because we are nature. We're not a part of it. We are it. And this project really affirmed that message for me and the collaborators. So it was a privilege really to do it.
I mean, it's such an honor to listen to you and Zizipho share, Philile. I mean, what I hear from you so beautifully is there was a deep listening exercise that you took on in the process.
Yeah.
And so someone is responding to you right now, Nane, saying shooting in nature is often an enriching experience. Sometimes the connection comes out naturally, not planned. Utando
Definitely.
Fuze was saying that, replying to Selo's line, so many lines there sounded like they were tailored for me, especially this one. So your audiences are with you. We've got like 5 minutes left or 3. Philile, I would love, we don't have time to actually, it's 3 minutes. So we don't have time to actually showcase the 2 videos, but we understood the process and thank you guys for sharing. So I'd like you to just share one of your poems from the process, Philile, as we just leave. Don't mind, it might cut you off, but I think that would be a nice way to exit.
Sure. I don't mind at all. I mean, it is a 9-minute poem, so I'll just try to
You can just
to
speak and
just
usher us out. It's okay. Technology and no technology. Thank you. And thank you for
indeed.
everyone at home who's watching online.
Thank you so much. Perhaps we could all start by just taking a deep, full, yummy breath in and out. Blessings. Release and make space. We are here to retrace in a body that offers you daily breath with grace. There is always room for depths of death. When a thing dies, it bleeds bleeds, then dries itself into a burgundy shade of established cries. This is where we rise. This is why we breed new life, release, and embody their prayers, thick with sacred layers of divine favors. Give thanks to what flows. Because as we breathe blessings into our bones, that's when we'll know how to meet our free.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.